A cold wind howls through the forgotten dungeon. Our heroes, brave and bold, venture deeper into the darkness, searching for clues of Zargon's whereabouts and looting treasure left behind by his minions. As they navigate the labyrinth, a sinister presence stirs within the corridors. A creature, grotesque and terrifying, emerges from the shadows. A new threat has arisen, and the fate of the realm hangs in the balance. Dark caverns, gory monsters, deadly traps, and worse! Once you enter the mystery underground world of HeroQuest, there's no turning back. Welcome back to the channel. I'm the Fair Weatherman. As always, thank you for tuning into my channel, where I strive to bring you nothing but HeroQuest news, gameplay, and homebrew content. I appreciate your continued support. Tired of the same old dungeon encounters? Ready to shake things up? Join me as we delve into the world of unexpected twists and turns. Today I'll explore a collection of random dungeon events inspired by the Axian Quest game system. Let's roll the dice and see what horrors await our heroes. Today I'm going to demonstrate how Zargon players can incorporate randomized dungeon encounters between hero turns when there are no active monster threats on the board. To do so, I'm going to utilize the elf heroes and the spells found in the Mage of the Mirror expansion. For a demonstration on the 4 elemental spells, be on the lookout for the wizard demonstration when I discuss the reagent kits sometime in the near future. Over the years, elves have seen evil corrupt the temples and cities they once called home. After centuries of inaction from the Elven Council, their hallowed sites have now turned to ruin. The forest lay despoiled and burned. Tired of watching his people slip into passive routines, the elf decides to stay silent no longer. Instead of being resigned to fade into darkness, a chance to change history has found him in the form of Mentor's Call. Deserting the elite ranks of the skirmishers and defying the wishes of the council, Gladrus, the elf, embarks towards the realms of men to help the mortals in their fight against this century's source of evil, Morcar von Zargon. Will he reach them in time? You are the elf, a master of both magic and the sword. You must use both well if you are to triumph. You have the power to cast 3 magical spells, all relating to one natural element, and also have the ability to cast 3 spells from the elf spell group found in the Mage of the Mirror expansion. Here's how I've incorporated Axian Quest dungeon events into my gameplay without having to purchase the card expansions. This is something that was offered on his website prior to the card expansions showing up on DriveThruRPG. I've taken his document and tweaked a few things, but left the majority of the gameplay intact. There are times while playing Zargon that I'm spent waiting patiently for heroes to go through their action phases and search phases before I get a chance to play again. I like to incorporate this dungeon events table to keep the threat active while heroes are searching through corridors and finding treasure. What a fun way to put the pressure on our heroes and let them know they're not the only ones in the dungeon. If the heroes have already opened at least one door and there are no monsters on the board, Zargon rolls a red die when it's their turn. So in this situation, if the wizard just finished off the skeleton, before the heroes get a second round, Zargon gets a chance to roll 1 red die. Now if I roll a 5 or a 6, I would then roll again. A 5. I get to look down at the table below to see what events await our heroes. Rat Swarm. Every hero must roll a white shield with its defense dice or lose 1 body point. One thing that I've done to level up this dungeon event is place one of the rats that we got in the base game system. I took a couple bases and glued the rats down along with some skulls to make them look like they're gnawing on bones in the dungeon. Heroes would then be forced to roll. In this case, the elf would have blocked the rat swarm. The wizard would also face a giant rat, thus taking a hit from the rat. Now what's really cool about the Axian Quest dungeon events chart is that there are 12 possible events that can happen. As long as Zargon rolls a 5 or a 6, he can then continue to roll down on the dice charts. 1. Terror. A random hero must roll a number of red dice equal to their mind points. If they don't obtain at least 1/6, they lose 1 mind point. We have vampire bats that attack random heroes with 3 combat dice. We have a random wandering monster appearing in a room at Zargon's discretion and plays immediately. You can either use the random monster that the quest calls for, or I'll show you in a minute how I've incorporated giant toads and giant spiders. Surprise attack. Zargon opens a closed door and immediately plays all the monsters inside the room. Reroll if there are no closed rooms. And then if we roll a 6 on our first go, we get to roll again on a more vicious dice table. We have a Goblin Thief. Every hero can attack him as he scampers around with a bag full of treasure. The Goblin Thief does not roll to defend. Each skull result causes the Goblin Thief to drop 1d6 gold coins. This goblin would appear and be jumping around as our heroes would take swipes at him, knocking out gold coins from its pockets before it would then run off and flee to other parts of the dungeon. Just another fun encounter that our heroes can have. Remember, you're Zargon, you're creating this experience. It doesn't always have to be negative. On the second chart, if Zargon were to roll a 2, we would get Dungeon Madness. For this turn only, Zargon controls and immediately uses a random hero as if they were a monster, taking control of the dwarf and making attack on the barbarian. Landing 1 blow on the barbarian before the dwarf can wake up and realize he'd been controlled by Zargon.
What?
Like I said, not every dungeon experience has to be a negative one. Benevolent Ghost appears and blesses the heroes and allows them to recover 1 lost body point and 1 lost mind point. But of course, no dungeon event would be complete without an ambush. A number of wandering monsters equal to the number of heroes appear,
Oh no!
each in a different room at Zargon's discretion, and plays immediately. There's also the Slayer. A dread warrior appears at the dungeon entrance and plays immediately. He also has 1 random dread spell and 1d6 times 10 worth of gold pieces, which can be looted if he's killed. This happened one time when I was playing as Zargon, and my heroes thought they had a clear exit. And after they had opened every door and cleared everything out and were just making their way back to the stairs, I rolled a 5, then rolled a 6, got to the second table, and pulled up the Slayer. And they now had to face a new monster enemy before they can get out of the dungeon. It was a lot of fun. And then you have the double event. Roll both red dice on the table above and apply both results in the order you prefer. Ignore this result if you get it again while rolling 2 dice. So in this case, there would be a wandering monster that would appear, and also the Slayer at the same time. Now, like I mentioned before, I like to mix up my wandering monsters. I get that each quest adds a wandering monster, typically a monster that's already in the quest for you to play with. But what I found what makes it most interesting is to buy a couple different minis and drop in some monsters that you would only see wandering around in the dungeon. Monsters that our heroes typically wouldn't encounter during a normal game. Like the rats that I mentioned before. What a fun way to incorporate a different wandering monster. Something that might scurry out from underneath a doorway or jump out of a drawer while scavenging through an alchemist bench. What's cool about this card that someone had made online was it gives the rat monster abilities, allowing it to move 10 spaces, attack 1, defend 2, body 1, and mind 1. Now as you can see, there's some asterisks there, allowing it to have some special abilities. Swarm, merge, and sneak. Giant rats are a staple product of the Skaven clan. These bioengineered vermin are ferocious predators known to attack in swarms. When measured after its death, they can often grow up to 4 feet long. All giant rats are vicious, wicked, and eternally hungry. The dangers faced in fighting such creatures should not be underestimated. Now, one of the special abilities that I like about the rat is allowing it to merge with other rats on the board, adding to its current statistics marked with an asterisk. Now, as you can see, we have 2 rats here in the dungeon fighting against the elf and the wizard. But if Zargon wanted to merge them together, he could, and allow them to become a rat with the strength of 2 body points. Now, of course, with this dungeon event, we don't necessarily have to have the rats to inflict these on our heroes, but I like having these figures, and I like that there's added movements and actions for these rats. Another one being sneak. These creatures can pass through monsters and heroes alike, allowing it to scurry around our heroes and attack whichever one Zargon sees fit. This is just a really awesome way to incorporate these pieces that we got in the box into actual gameplay. The other exciting action that these giant rats can take with merge is that not only will their body points increase, their attack and defense dice will also increase. If Zargon chose to merge them all together and make them one giant rat swarm, they would now have an attack strength of 4, defense strength of 8, and body points 4, thus creating a really cool monster attack. Now, of course, our elf hero can easily use one of these elf spells to try to take out this rat swarm. Something like Hypnotic Blaze. When this spell is cast, an illusion of a huge animated flame appears. Every figure in the room or corridor, except the spellcaster, must roll 1 red dice. A figure that rolls equal to or less than its mind points is unaffected by the illusion. Rolling a number greater than its mind points means the figure is paralyzed for 3 turns, unable to move, attack, or defend. So in this case, our giant rat swarm would roll 1 red die because the mind points do not merge together. They're still dumb giant rats, and there's a very high probability that we're going to get something higher than a 1 and paralyze these rats, allowing our heroes to take these things out one at a time. Any hero in the same room as the elf casting the Hypnotic Blaze spell would be affected by this illusion, but as you know, the wizard has a mind point of 6 and cannot be affected because you can't roll higher than a 6. So in a way, he's immune. I also thought it would be cool to incorporate giant spiders, something that I think HeroQuest is missing out on. Now we finally get something similar to this in Jungles of Delthrak with the spawnlings. Of course, we also get a giant spider, the Blight Crawler. The giant spider is a deadly hunter, easily capable of ensnarling and overwhelming a fully grown man. Their toxic venom is deadly to all but the hardest victim. Only few survive for long once bitten. Some old and powerful giant spiders have been known to grow as large as a house, and goblin tribes revere these ancient beasts and even ride them to war. You may encounter singly or in small numbers. The giant spider has a movement of 7, attack 3, defend 2, body 2, and no mind points, with a special ability to sneak past our heroes in the dungeon and web their victims. Spiders can web their opponents by rolling a 6 on a movement dice, stopping a hero from movement or attack. The hero may attempt to break free during their next turn by rolling a 3 or higher on a single movement dice. And like all wandering monsters in the dungeon, you can have 2 appear and attack both of our heroes at the same time, making a really unique dungeon event. I purchased a handful of these spiders off eBay, and I had a difficult time trying to superglue their tiny legs to this base, until it dawned on me one day to just use some hot glue and just glue them back to the bottoms. Another fun thing that you can do is just glue a bunch of them down onto one giant base and have a giant spider swarm. which will frighten any group of heroes if they encounter this in the dungeon. Now if our heroes were to come across a giant spider like this, I would merge together their body points like I did with the rat, making one awesome creature. Now if our elf happened to be in there, the fantastic warrior that he is, he can then use another one of its elf spells. More than likely I would go to deep sleep on this one. The spell may be cast on any monster within your line of sight. If the monster has 1 to 3 mind points, the monster falls asleep immediately. It stays asleep until Zargon's next turn. The monster cannot defend against the hero's attack while it is asleep. Now with the giant spider having a mind points of 0, I would say it would fall within that lower range of mind points and allow our heroes to continue attacking it. For every 2 body points that our heroes take off of this giant spider swarm, I would imagine one of them dying off until there are none left. The last but not least of these added wandering monsters that I've incorporated into my gameplay is the giant toad. A huge carnivorous amphibian with a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, violent and almost impossible to kill. If a giant toad does not devour you whole, you run the risk of it smothering you with its extremely large body. Their bellies are yellow with the rest of their poisonous skin, green with black stripes. Their tongue is long and sticky, able to grab its victims up to 6 feet away. Another card that I found online just searching for HeroQuest monsters is the giant toad. And what an awesome picture this one is. With a movement of 8, attack 4, defend 4, body 3, mind 1, the giant toad has a special ability to hop over its victims, allowing it to pass through monsters and heroes, fighting against any creature with hop, using non-ranged weapons, has a penalty of 1 die less when attacking. So if our giant toad happens to hop into the room, say after one of our heroes searched the dungeon and ended up with a wandering monster, instead of using the same boring skeleton or goblin, you can incorporate this toad. Now when our elf heroes choose to attack this monster with non-ranged weapons, they will be forced to attack with 1 less dice. You can imagine the toad might be hopping around and is being rather difficult to hit. If this elf were to attack without a ranged weapon, say a spell, just going to use its sword, then he would have to attack with 1 less dice. But if this elf were to use another one of its elf spells from a distance, say slow, the spell reduces any one monster's movement to 1 square per turn. The monster also rolls 1 less combat die when it attacks or defends. The monster's movement and combat die cannot be less than 1. These effects last until the monster is killed or is out of the spellcaster's line of sight. This would greatly reduce the giant toad's ability to move, slowing it down for our heroes to attack it and kill it. Like I said, not every dungeon event has to be a negative one. The first time a 1 is rolled during a dungeon event, the heroes would then be able to encounter Zaresi, the traveling merchant. From a dark corner of the room, what looks like a pile of rags, bags, and blankets starts to move. Turning around, a person appears from under a dark hood and says, "Is there anything you need on your journey?" All heroes can buy rusty weapons at a 10% discount or sell used items at a value of 50% off during the quest. A vagabond who can be found wandering dark dungeons collecting items off the corpses of fallen heroes and monsters alike. The traveling merchant is all about profit. All prices for potions in the alchemy deck are as listed. And then one other really cool thing that I've incorporated is allowing my heroes to draw 5 cards from the equipment deck. All items are marked down 10% from market price. Once the purchase is complete, roll 1 combat dice. If a black shield is rolled, the rusty item immediately breaks and is rendered useless. Don't bother trying to find our traveling merchant. He's long gone, and there are no refunds in the dungeon. I purchased this figure from Minis 3D, and I'm really happy with it. I think it's a really cool addition to the dungeon. I've seen people use pack mules that might randomly show up and allow our heroes to grab potions off of them. I've even seen on Etsy like goblin merchants. So feel free to use any merchant that you find necessary and fun to incorporate in your dungeon. I know a lot of people like to play HeroQuest rules as written, but man, playing as a kid, I remember just making up all kinds of rules and incorporating all kinds of fun play mechanics. I constantly remind myself that it's okay to homebrew and get away from the rules as written, because it's all about just having fun with your friends playing the game. And in my case, more often than not, playing with my kids. And if you're new to the channel and haven't had a chance to check out some of my older videos, I've incorporated a goblin mercenary into my gameplay, as well as a really cool space marine, and I'll show you how to make 2 elf champion heroes from the statues found in Rise of the Dreadmoon. An idea I got from somebody on Reddit who made them into hero figures with a set of playable cards. So check out those videos below. I hope these new wandering monsters add another layer of thematic gameplay to your dungeon and give you another reason to go out and buy some really cool sculpts on Etsy and incorporate them into your gameplay. As always, I'm grateful to all of my fans out there who continue to help grow the channel by sharing the content, liking the videos, and engaging in the comments below. It's you that keep my channel going and give me inspiration to continue to make videos week after week. So thank you. Your very survival depends on your ability to work together, for no true hero stands alone. Come, let the quest begin.